First, DEI co-chair Sherry Casterline will share her thoughts about lenses for looking at racism.
So it was about a little over a year and a half ago, Lisa Goddess invited, I think everybody who was interested, to her Buddhist group, which was hosting a class on anti-racism. The course was based around two books, White Fragility and White Rage, both of which are in our library, by the way. I tell you, especially White Rage changed my life. I had always thought that I was relatively knowledgeable about the history of Black people in this country. I was alarmed at how much I didn't know, and I didn't know that I didn't know. For example, I didn't know about the burning of Tulsa. I didn't know that Black World War II GIs couldn't take advantage of the GI Bill for housing and education. I had never thought about the searches for separated family members by ex-enslaved people upon gaining freedom. I didn't appreciate the great extent to which racist policies have driven American history, and not just in the South, but everywhere. And I hadn't a clue about the extent to which whiteness was my default point of view. At some point, right around that time, I ran across this, and I saw the unfortunate truth in it. And I determined that we owe it to ourselves, and to each other, and to our faith to learn as much as we can. DEI is here to guide you should you elect to become an anti-racist. And just incidentally, being anti-racist is not the same as not being racist. Anti-racism has an element of action to it. But the place to begin, we have found, is by educating ourselves about the history or non-history of the United States. And DEI is here to help.
Larry Escalona will talk about his experiences growing up as a Latino in poverty.
Thank you. Good morning. At the age of 7, I was a political refugee. I was born in Cuba in 1960, the year after Fidel Castro took over the island. My family chose not to live under communism, and after months of trying, gained permission to leave Cuba. Although my family had lived a good middle-class existence, they gave up everything to come to the United States, where they would not have to live under a dictatorial, tyrannical regime. The move meant we had to leave behind everything: our property, our personal belongings, and some of our family. After a short flight from Havana to Miami, we arrived in the US with little more than the clothes on our back, and we were welcomed into the United States. My mother soon gained employment, working as a maid for a doctor and his wife. My aunts and uncles worked in the blue-collar sector as factory workers, mechanics, and in hospitality industry. Everyone found employment, but our standard of living declined. We were no longer middle class, but now lived in poverty. But my mother was tenacious and insisted that I, her only child, would be successful in life and would not have to endure the hardships she and her siblings endured. Just like most immigrant families, my mother wanted more for me, and she knew the best way to get there was through education, something she never got to pursue. Thus, my mother consistently encouraged me to do more and pursue loftier goals. And her employers, the doctor and his wife, took me under their wing and introduced me to things I would otherwise have known nothing about. They took me to the opera, to the symphony, to political meetings, and to nice restaurants. They didn't see me or my mother as poor immigrants, but they supported and helped me drive our dreams of equal inclusion in this country. They are both gone now, but I will always be thankful. I was the first person in my family to attend college, but we had no money to pay for college. And at the time, we knew nothing about grants or scholarships. Thus, I joined the Army. Not only did this give me the path to a university degree, but it also gave me the opportunity to give back to this country I loved so much. Yes, I was a proud GI. Fast forward a few years. Upon completion of my master's certificate and passing the CPA exam on the first try, I went to work for Price Waterhouse, a top 4 global firm. Later, I moved to Motorola and held executive positions there for 26 years. During that time, I've traveled the world, and my wife, daughter, and I have lived an eventful and happy life. Thus, the next time you think of immigrants to this country, think of me. I dare to say that the majority of those immigrants have a story similar to mine. It is not an easy decision to leave one's home and one's family, to travel sometimes thousands of miles across unbelievable terrain and to endure unbelievable hardship, all for the promise of a better life. Today, I am a proud American, and I proudly support diversity, equity, and inclusion in our society as we welcome new immigrants to this great country. Thank you.
Kimberly Harrison is a sociology instructor who teaches courses about diversity in America and issues in gender and sexuality. She has a lot to say about the importance of welcoming a variety of people to the table.
Good morning. So when we first started planning this service, we discussed, who's going to talk about what, and so there was this general agreement that I would talk about gender and sexuality because, as Susan said, I do teach about it. And then June came, and the Dobbs case. And for the first full day in my life, because I was born the day before Roe versus Wade, for the first day in my life, those rights were no longer mine or half the population's. And that kind of shocked me. And so I said, kind of tongue-in-cheek, semi-seriously, that I was just going to come up here and stand here quietly for 2 minutes like this. Next slide, please. But upon thinking about it, I realized as I read other people who were also reacting to the Supreme Court decision that this is a very white middle-class reaction. Not that it's not an important one, but it's saying this is something that could happen to us. This is something that's going to lead us down a path. And the reality is that there are a lot of people, particularly people who don't have my peach-colored skin, who are experiencing this in a way that is very different than the way that I shall experience it. Next slide, please. So yes, I am a woman, and that puts me into a group that is discriminated against, and I could tell you stories about that. But at the same time, I do have this white skin, this white privilege. Now, I look like my father's grandfather, so I look like one of my great-grandfathers. If I looked like my father's other grandfather, the one who was born in Mexico, I would not have this peach skin. I would have brown skin, and I would probably be up here telling you a very different story. It's just the luck of the genes that I stand up here looking like someone who could get sunburned at any moment. I'm a heterosexual cisgender woman, so I have that privilege. I live in Illinois, where right now my rights to my own privacy, to my own body, are still protected. And I've grown up and live a middle-class lifestyle, although currently as an adjunct, that's debatable, but I have a lot of rights, and therefore I have a lot of responsibilities. Next slide, please. And so if you can see, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but there are all of these different identities that all intersect and impact with each other to create who we are, how we experience the world, and how the world experiences us. And gender and sexual orientation are just two of those. And yet they matter quite a bit. And in my mind, all of these fit within the local society, the broader society, and we impact each other. Next slide, please. And so in my mind, all of these things are related. And so while I do plan to pass my own vote in November and encourage others to do the same and to help to elect those politicians who I believe are going to do the same thing, it's not so much about the people who are like me, and it's not for me. It's for all the people who are, as Lisa said, more likely to be harmed, more likely to be assaulted, including sexually assaulted, and may need these rights, may need these privileges. People who are poor, people who have less access to medical care. It's for these people that I'm going to go ahead and try and fight for the right for abortion. Even whether or not I agree with abortion, it doesn't matter. It's the right to our own bodies. And that's where I stand, and I thank you for listening.
Terry Shoba will share with us why it is important that we recognize the legacy and the current contributions of Indigenous people. She is preparing programs for UUSG. Across 3 November evenings, we will have readings and conversations to help us better understand the experiences and perspectives of Indigenous Americans.
Last December, I offered to help expand our church's DEI database by vetting merely 20 links to content about Native Americans. I thought, well, that's easy enough. But they led me from a book to a podcast, then to a video, which led to poetry, then to another book and another. I became fascinated by the wisdom of Indigenous peoples, how any of them managed to survive. Those of you who have read and loved Braiding Sweetgrass by Native American author Robin Wall Kimmerer know the feeling of being lifted out of your own life and dropped into another world to imagine other ways of looking at our world. Think of school kids every day reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Imagine if instead they began each day expressing gratitude for the world we inhabit, for the sun, moon, and stars, wind and water, birds and berries, the trees and mountains, the prairies, and all the creatures of the earth. What a vision. But in Braiding Sweetgrass, I also learned about Wendigo. Do we have a slide? Thank you. Wendigo. And the more I thought about it, the more profound I found it to be. Try to imagine the depth of winter for the Anishinaabe or Potawatomi people many, many generations ago. A frigid night of deep snow in the north woods with only fire and deerskin to warm them in their lodges and food nearly gone. Starvation and even cannibalism were realities in the era of the Little Ice Age, when the mythology of Wendigo is believed to have originated. They knew that Wendigo is a human monster whose selfishness has overpowered its self-control. It is never sated. While its native habitat is the North Woods, its range has expanded. Multinational corporations have spawned a new breed of Wendigo that insatiably devours the Earth's resources. Wendigo is also the name for that within each of us, which cares more for our own life than for anything else. But the more Wendigo eats, the more ravenous it becomes. Wendigo footprints are all around us once we know what to look for. ExxonMobil, the coal industry, and U.S. agribusiness come to mind. Many of us order from Amazon, shop at Costco, keep our lawns free of weeds, enjoy international travel, and eat meat. Not to mention my own closet stuffed with clothes. All tracks of insatiable consumption. The author points out that we are all complicit. We have allowed the market to define what we value, even if it impoverishes the earth. Yet for all our wealth, we are the poorer for it, and it's happening all around us. Wendigo thinking. Through our DEI conversations about Indigenous peoples, we better understand all they have lost. But in braiding sweetgrass, we begin to see what we have lost. Thank you.
Ashley Peterson is well known to us. We welcome her to share some of her experiences with ADHD.
I procrastinated writing this speech until the day before. And because I lost my favorite pen, I wrote it in pencil. Welcome to my life. Hi, brains. My name is Ashley Peterson. My pronouns are she, her, hers, they, them, theirs. I am a non-binary transgender woman, and I am an ADHD brain. My ADHD is not as visible as my transition, nor is it as easy to talk about or write about, but it affects every part of how I navigate the world. Clean up my apartment? Nope, those piles of laundry will get bigger. Pay my bills on time. Sorry, credit score, you're going down. Take hormone replacement medication that is necessary to sustain my life. Whoops, I forgot. Again. ADHD is short for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, and it falls under the umbrella of neurodivergence, which includes ADHD, autism, and other developmental disorders. The opposite of neurodivergent is neurotypical, someone who does not live with a developmental disorder. ADHD affects my ability to organize, make decisions, act in a responsible manner, and to set and stick to long-term goals. All of the above come natural to a neurotypical brain, to the point of being taken for granted. Being diagnosed with ADHD as a child, I received medication, treatments, and an education plan to help me navigate the challenges of school. I constantly heard the refrains, "They're smart, but they don't apply themselves." Towards the end of high school, my support, my medication, my treatments, and my education plan were all dialed back or removed. Everyone assumed that I'd grown up and could manage my ADHD just fine without help. They were wrong. Without support, the challenges of college, of adult life, a gender transition, and soon marriage became uphill battles that my brain was not prepared to handle. ADHD made accomplishing my life goals much harder, and like a human-sized magpie, cursed me with a never-ending fixation to find new and shinier hobbies and interests. Music production, turn it up. Weaving and crochet, not a problem. Foraging and mushroom hunting, where did that come from? And now today, as I struggle to manage my bills, navigate the working world, and become the woman I was meant to be, one fact becomes inescapably clear. This world was not designed for my brain. ADHD is a disability like any other that affects me throughout my whole life and deeply intersects with my gender transition. I am not just quirky. I am not just absent-minded. I am disabled. I am not alone in my struggles. Other neurodivergent brains face similar challenges. Just as we should continue to support our trans children and adults with gender-affirming care, so should we support our ADHD and neurodivergent children and adults as they come into their own power. Listen to us as we tell you that we need education plans. School is hard enough for us already. Help us find medication that works for us. Medication can help us learn to cope. Be present throughout our lives to the best of your abilities. We need your love and patience. And thus, as this flock of birds in a human brain bids you goodbye, I have but one more request. Please help me find my favorite pen.
Teal Seco is a familiar face at UUSG. She is autistic and is a self-identified ambassador for autistic adults and children. She is proud to use her education and energy to amplify the voices of all autistics.
Honey, I found your pen. Good morning. My name is Teal Seco. My pronouns are she, they. I am 31 years old, and I am autistic. I have a bachelor's degree in disability studies from Aurora University and spend my free time speaking as an ambassador for autistic people in the Human Library. Today, I would like to speak to you about the language used to talk about disabled people. I imagine that many of you are already correcting me in your heads. Person with autism, person with a disability. Why is it that non-disabled people presume that they know us disabled people better than we know ourselves? Before I get to that, let's define the difference. The phrase person with a disability, and I have a few examples up here of both. The phrase person with a disability is in a class of speech known as person-first language. Person-first language seeks to remind the speaker and the listener that the subject is a person, that they have value, and their condition is only part of who they are. On the surface, there seems to be nothing wrong with this. So why does it get disabled people, particularly me, so fired up? A few reasons. One, it's terribly awkward. The speaker is using more words to say the same thing. Two, the speaker is trying to separate me from my autism without my consent. Could I have the next slide, please, for a brief moment? I should have a blue one. In short, if I take a plane and the airline loses my luggage, I don't arrive without my autism. It is not separate from me. And third, my personal favorite, Why do they or anyone around them, the speaker or anyone listening, need to be reminded that I am a person? Was someone going to forget? In contrast, disabled person is an example of identity-first language. It emphasizes that the disability plays a role in who the person is and reinforces disability as a positive cultural identifier. As the saying goes, as the slogan goes, disabled is not a dirty word. When I use identity-first language, I am telling you that immediately that my experience of the world is different. There might be communication challenges between us, or differences in values, priorities, or energy levels. Just like I introduce myself with my name and pronouns, I am choosing to put my identity as a disabled person front and center. I do not have autism. I am autistic. I wear it with pride, in opposition to a bombardment of messages telling me to hide my disability. You don't matter. It's not a big deal. Your needs are inconvenient. It's not real. Everyone goes through that. My point is that I can never forget that I'm autistic. The world won't let me. I am reminded constantly through challenges in social interaction, in my daily efforts to take care of myself and my space, and the constant bombardment of sensory noise, that this world was not made with the intention for me to fit in. So I ask you, if I'm not allowed to forget, why should anyone else be? Descriptors like person with autism or differently abled paper over the challenges I face every single day. They put a pretty bow on meltdowns and depression and anxiety. They're a person, just like me. We're the same. I don't have to work to accommodate them or think about their needs. Those needs and challenges are what made me who I am. I am compassionate because I have suffered. I am patient because I have worked myself to the bone. I listen because I do not hear and have gone unheard. There are people out there in the disability community who use person-first language. That is, of course, their choice to make. But when you, as a non-disabled person, talk about me the way I talk about myself, it communicates to me that you see me as a whole person and you accept all parts of me, including the parts that aren't convenient or easy. Being disabled is hard, and I don't have a magic superpower that gives my situation a silver lining. My disability is invisible, but it is no less real. I choose to live visibly disabled. See me, hear me, speak of me. My name is Teal Seco, and I am autistic.
As we extinguish our chalice, may each of us take its light within you and hear these words of Frederick E. Gillis. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Peace be with you. Amen. Shalom. Namaste. And blessed be.